God has called Daniel and Anya Storey with their 7 kids to medical missions in Africa. You will love the story of the Storeys on today's episode of Family Vision.
Hi, my name is Ray Rienow. Welcome to Family Vision with my parents, Dr. Rob and Amy Rienow, strengthening families through practical, encouraging, and real conversations.
Rob and Amy Rienow here with Visionary Family Ministries. Thrilled to introduce to you our special guests here in the studio, Dr. Daniel and Anya Storey. God has called them to serve as a family in Togo, Africa, through medical missions. All right, so we need to start with Daniel and Anya 101. Your marriage, your kids. Introduce yourself to the Family Vision community.
Yes, I'm Daniel Storey, and my wife Anya and I have been married for 17 years this July. We have 7 children. Ages range from almost 16 to age 1.
I'm Anya. We have 5 boys and 2 girls. They are all about 2.5 years apart, 7 children, and we are looking forward to become missionaries in the near future.
And you guys live in the Indianapolis area right now. Daniel, you've been a family doctor there, but we got to know you first, not as a family doctor, although you have helped us at many family camps over the years. It's wonderful to know a doctor when you're traveling.
We've probably abused that relationship
Not
a little bit.
abused,
I don't
sweetheart.
know. Slightly, maybe. I don't know. But
taken advantage, not abused, or that not taken advantage. We've been thankful for Daniel.
You've come through on multiple occasions for us.
Yes, Rob was my youth pastor at Wayne Bible Church.
Yeah, and I can remember you as a high school student on those Project Serve missions trips when we ran into you at Forest Springs Camp, and we were delighted to reconnect. It's always fun to see someone who's a student in your ministry and then to see God really brought our paths together again. Like we weren't expecting that, so it was such a blessing.
So we've experienced family camp together. Our kids have gotten to know each other. What have been some of your highlights at Forest Springs Family Camp?
Yeah, we've been going to the Forest Springs Camp for probably 11 years now. So it's like a huge part of our children's childhood, and they always look forward to it every summer. We haven't missed a single summer yet, and they love all the activities for children, like archery. It's probably archery is one of their favorite boats, and just swimming in the lake. And David, our oldest, loves to do photography and taking pictures of the nature and hiking in the forest there. I guess there's something for everyone there.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
So Daniel, we first met in youth ministry back in Bible church days, but Anya, you first got connected with me and Amy through the podcast?
Right, yes. So I heard a friend, I think, mention that there's really cool podcast, Visionary Family, and this pastor, Rob Rienow, he preaches that kids should sit with adults in the service in church. I'm like, well, that's what they do in Russia normally. That's what everyone does. And it's kind of wasn't a new idea to me because of my background in Russian churches. And she said, it's like all about discipling your children and not relying on church. I'm like, I want to hear it. I'm really curious. At that time, we had only like 2 or 3 children, and they were all really young.
Yeah.
And I said to Daniel, I'm listening to this Visionary Family podcast, and I usually listen to it when I go for a run or walk, And I loved hearing it was really inspiring that we need to impact our children instead of relying on church to disciple our kids and bring them to Christ. It's all on us, parents, the responsibility. And Daniel is like, I know, like this pastor. He's my youth pastor, Rob Rienow. I'm like, what's the youth pastor? He's like, when I was in high school. I'm like, okay, cool. But now I'm listening to him on podcasts.
I did not know. That is hysterical. I did not know that. Okay.
All right, let's back up the timeline. We're going to get to your call to go serve as a family in Togo, Africa, in medical missions. But you were both called to missions, sensed a call from the Lord to missions before you even met each other.
Right.
So, Daniel, you start. Tell us about that first time the Lord kind of moved in your heart to give you a heart for missions.
I definitely was called to missions before I was called to medicine. After I became saved at 14, I started reading stories of early missionaries, got really inspired about what they were doing, and I always dreamed of going somewhere abroad. My parents worked for the airlines, and so we traveled a lot as a family, and I was very interested in different cultures and different people groups. And so I was thinking about going into missions first, and then I chose family medicine because usually, medically, family doctors and general surgeons tend to be the two groups that are often on the mission field long-term with different places.
That's interesting. What about you, Anya?
So I became a Christian in Russia through the ministry of missionaries. They came to plant church in my hometown of Volgograd, and basically they were discipling me. They were encouraging me in my walk with God. I got my first Bible as a present from one lady who was a missionary in my church. She was a women's ministry leader, and she gave me my first Bible. And just seeing their sacrifices, they served everyone in our church, and it was just amazing to see them doing their ministry to us. Inspired me to also go and be missionary. I kind of felt from the very first days. I became a Christian at age of 18, and I thought after I graduate from university, I want to go be missionary in Africa or India. That was my ideas at that time. And a couple people in my church had like a little Christian library, basically just like a bookshelf of Christian books, but I would take those books and read, and there were many biographies and autobiographies of missionaries. And those stories were so inspiring, like some young families go in the middle of jungle and living such a rough life, but they were reaching people with the gospel and people becoming saved and planting churches there. And I thought, I want to do that. Like I felt like this burning kind of like sensation in my soul that soon I should go be missionary. At that time, I didn't know that God would first call me on a mission in my home, in my family, with my husband and children. So it kind of got postponed a little bit, but I still never lost that dream.
I love hearing your passion, and I'd love to hear then how God brought the two of you together, with both of you having this heart for missions. And now tell us a little bit about how you met.
Totally on the other side of the world.
Yes.
Right? Russia and Wheaton, and now you're married going on the mission field.
Let's hear how you
let's
met.
hear that story.
Well, I better start that one a little bit, I think, because I kept doing some mission trips after high school group, but out of the blue, I remember when I was just finishing my college years, my parents got a call from Renata Kurtz, a Little Lambs ministry here in Wheaton. She said that American missionary on the team that were going to do a Bible camp for orphan kids in Russia had dropped out. And so she had a chance to go to Russia for free. And so I didn't even second guess it. So I jumped on and met my wife there. So
when was that? What year was that, Daniel?
2005.
Okay, so tell us about that experience. I want to hear a little bit more. I know Renata Kurtz. I know her ministry. So this is new information for me that you got this last-minute invite to go with her team. So tell me about meeting Anya then.
Well, we didn't actually break the rule. It says you can't date on the trip, so we didn't do any dating there. But
good to know. I was concerned. I was very concerned. Okay.
So the trip was the mission trip to, it was a town of Serafimovich, which is about 5 hours from Volgograd, where I lived.
Okay.
And the majority of the team, they were Russians. There were just, I think, 5 Americans who came alongside and participated for a month. We lived with the orphans at their house.
Wow.
It's like over 100 kids, or maybe 150 kids. I can't remember how many were there. and they would give us rooms, and we lived with them for a month and do camp, like Christian camp. Because they're on summer break, they have no school, so they were free, the children, and we do all the Bible lesson, games, songs, skits, like everything, all day long, like the program for them. And we kind of became friends during that time. The first time, nothing else happened. And then a year later,
Okay, tell us about a year
2006.
later.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's jump ahead a year.
So a year later, I was more interested in Anya than she was into me.
Yeah, he came again on the same trip.
Okay.
And we kind of became,
We were working
still
with the same group of
closer
kids.
friends.
Yeah.
But eventually it all transformed into
So after
more than friendship, I guess.
after the second summer, I would keep in contact with some of the orphan children by writing letters to Anya, who would translate and write letters to the orphan
Right.
kids and send back to
Right.
me.
Clever, Daniel. Clever.
So then, okay, so how did the relationship start, though? How do you go from letters to orphan kids to dating? That's what I want to know.
I came back in the wintertime to visit the kids, but also to see
Like
Anya
during
again.
his Christmas break you were in college, right?
Yes.
So, or were you in medical school already?
I was in medical school,
Yeah,
but I
medical
remember taking the bus in Moscow and to Volgograd, and there was a lot of people drunk on New Year's Eve. But
Right. But then he visited and we went ice skating together and just spent like 5 days or I don't remember exactly how many, about 5 days together, and felt like something starting.
Oh, so
Eventually
sweet.
he offered, not offered, how to say, proposed to marry. And I said yes.
Offered to marry you. I have an offer for you.
after spending like 4 or 5 hours on the phone every day for a few
Right,
months.
right. He kept calling me, and we talked like 4 or 5 hours. One day we talked for 8 hours.
Oh my
no
goodness.
kidding. I can't believe now. What were we talking about?
It was love. It was love. I love it. So you proposed and got married what year then? You said you were married 17 years, so I can't do the math.
2007.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
And you now have had a ministry as a family doctor in the Indianapolis area, and you studied linguistics.
I did,
in
yes.
college.
So my dream was to translate Bible to tribal languages, like the nations that don't have Bible translation yet. And I wanted to join Wycliffe Bible translators. I even went to like a recruiting conference in St. Petersburg, Russia, and they told me, yes, we'll send you to London, England to study linguistics there, and then you can go in the field. And some of my friends from my hometown went.
Okay.
I just never got a chance because even though I always wanted to be missionary, after we started a relationship with Daniel and got married, he told me right away he wants to be a missionary too. I'm like, great, like that's what my plan was. He's like, yeah, we'll do it together, but I first need to go finish medical school. I'm like, okay. He's like, then residency, and then we'll need to pay off medical school debt. I'm like, okay, I see that's going to take quite a few years.
It's a bit of a longer-term plan than I had in mind.
and then 7 children.
And then seven
Seven
children. So
children.
when did people always ask this question to us with our 7 kids? Did you always know you wanted a big family? Our answer is generally no. We didn't always know that. But tell us a little bit about that with you.
I don't think we ever decided how many kids we would actually have.
Yeah, we never discussed. I mean, he kind of said his dream is to become a father. He thought it's a very cool thing to be a father. When we were dating, I thought, oh, he must be such a good man if he already now talking about being a father. Like, it just showed his values, to me.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know, how many children do you want? Maybe 4 or 5? I'm like, yeah, maybe 4 or 5. It's a lot. I am from a family of 2, just me and my brother. Like 4 or 5, it's a lot of kids. But God blessed us with 7, and we're happy.
I love it. I love it. How many languages do you, I know you studied linguistics, but you
Yes.
speak a few languages. Can
Yeah,
you tell us a little bit about that?
I speak mostly Russian and English really well, but I speak French and Spanish at intermediate level. Plus, I studied a few like ancient dead languages, like old Slavic language.
Interesting.
That has old Russian Bible, like for Orthodox Church, and is still quite widely used in Russian culture. Then I studied Latin and Greek because I went to Bible college in Russia and studied New Testament Greek, but not like I'm super proficient in any other languages. I studied a little Ukrainian and German too, and understand it a little bit.
Well, clearly
But
you would throw those in.
So those
Obviously.
are just more like a
Obviously,
hobby.
Right. Just a hobby. I get it.
Languages come easily to me, so I think
Apparently so.
I'm looking forward to joining the translation efforts in Africa.
Awesome.
And
And we've been around your kids enough at camp to know they clearly speak Russian and
They
English
do,
because you must
yes.
speak both in your
Yes,
home,
yes.
plus whatever other hobby languages you've shared with them.
Right,
I think one of my favorite memories is Ray meeting Philippe, and he could not get enough of saying the word Philippe. And when we were at camp, like he was so excited. And we were like,
Thanks, Dad. It's not
I was
Felipe.
like, it's not Philippe. He wasn't, Philippe. I'm like, he was really trying to say it with the right accent. I mean, I think he was 4 when he was doing this, but we were like, we've got to get to know this little boy, Philippe.
We were doing Russian as a hobby language for him at the time.
It was just, not proficient, but just a hobby.
Yeah, our oldest son, David, speaks French too, and he even was translating for Daniel in Togo,
Okay,
in
so-
Africa.
Great lead in, Anya, but tell us a little bit about why Togo and, like you've already told us, some of the languages that are there. That's of interest too.
Well, by God's providence, Philippe is pronounced correctly in French, so Togo would be a good fit.
Philippe, it's like French.
I didn't think about that.
No, so in our family, I think Russian is probably the main language we speak. And then, I speak English with the kids, but French would be the next language there. And so we've always had a heart for unreached groups. And so West Africa has a lot of areas that are very unreached. Togo is next to Benin, Burkina Faso, Mali, places that are very restricted and they don't
Okay.
have a lot of outreach at all. And so I've always had a heart to go places where they don't have the knowledge of Christ. And so places where it would be more useful to like just introduce people who Jesus is.
Amen.
So I want to hear, to move your whole family, your giant family, to leave your very successful medical practice. We've been to your house, to leave your very comfortable home,
Yeah.
to move your whole family to the other side of the world. There has to be an overwhelming sense of compelling from the Lord and from the Holy Spirit to do this.
I feel like missions has always been a compelling desire for me from when I first was saved. I used to do lots of short-term trips, and then I had a short-term trip in Honduras where I got to see the second part of Matthew 28:20, where Jesus says, go into all the ends of the earth. And then the last part's, lo, I am with you always. I didn't actually do much on that mission trip except be the patient. When I was there, I had my appendix almost rupture. And so it was a kind of near-death experience, but I'd always dreamed of just going long-term in missions and not just doing it as a kind of like a hobby thing once a year. And that became kind of like a starting point for getting me looking about redirecting our family towards long-term missions. And when COVID happened, it was more of a push to kind of look into making it a calling and lifestyle, not just doing something once a year.
So why was that experience in Honduras where you became the patient, not the doctor? How did God use that? You would think that would have the opposite effect on a lot of people. Like, well, that didn't work out so well. I'm not sure. So how did the Lord use that to change your perspective?
So I went to Honduras and I was having some stomach pain throughout the entire time, and it was getting progressively worse. And I kept talking to some of the doctors on the trip, and they kept saying, well, it's just the food here is just being in a different place, and it's nothing that serious. But I actually stayed in the hotel by myself and then let the team go one day, and I started to think that, I may not have tomorrow or even much longer in life. And I didn't want to just have a nice business. I wanted to have an impact for Christ. I like short-term mission trips, but it's hard to have a long-term impact with people when you are just there for a week.
Yeah, like relationships. Daniel is more, that's why he chose family medicine, because he likes to have long relationships, like get to know their families and their stories. He didn't want to work like emergency room doctor, something like that.
That you're in and out of people's lives.
He loves the relationship aspect. That's why he'd go to short-term trip, and I'd be always excited that I get to stay home, watch the children. I felt like this is my part of the ministry,
sure,
that
you're
watch,
supporting him.
Yes, and he can go and make impact for the Lord. But then he'd come back after usually 1 week or two, and he took 19 times, I think he went to Russia with medical mission.
Okay.
And he went to Honduras, obviously. But then he'd come back, and those people he met and he shared gospel, that's it.
You don't
end
know.
of relationship, yes.
But what happened with the appendix in Honduras? Finish your story, because you were, so you thought you were close to death. You were really beginning to wonder.
I was calling Anya back and forth, and she's like, you think it's something more serious? But then I didn't really want to do anything maybe not wise in the middle of Honduras, but I felt God leading me to actually eventually in the middle of the night go talk to the hotel worker who didn't speak much English at all and get him to call someone to get me to the hospital. And took another couple hours, and then finally an ambulance came, and then they took me to the hospital. And when I got there, they assumed I had food poisoning and tried to give me different things for that, and they were really not listening to me at first for a while. But I just felt like something was going on, and I didn't know it was my appendix until I got some pain relief and felt the pain only in the one spot where the appendix is. And I'm like, that might be something serious. So,
did you have it removed in Honduras, or did you make it? You did?
Yeah, it would not have been wise to try to fly back and get it removed. So
you have a firsthand experience of what it's like to be a patient in a country in a life-threatening situation. And God used that to really awaken you to this long-term call.
It is a third world country, so medicine is not that great there. So it was kind of scary because he had to have such a pretty intensive procedure in such a place, And I feel like Daniel became more focused on just life is short, can end any moment. Let's not waste any time. Let's live for the Lord,
Wow.
Amen.
Praise the Lord.
Well, we're going to come back for part 2 of this conversation, and we're going to talk about your calling to be serving at this hospital in Togo. You're going to be caring for children and adults in the hospital, patients in the outpatient clinic. You're also going to be doing some education and mentoring of the African resident physicians. We're also going to talk a lot about your kids. How in the world are you going to do this, and where are you going to live, and how is this going to work? And the reason why we wanted to have you on Family Vision is we wanted the Family Vision community to come alongside you. We wanted them to come alongside you with prayer, wanted them to come alongside you with financial support. And you can reach out directly to Daniel and Anya through email at daniel.storey, Storey, at ABWE, that's their sending agency, abwego.org. And we are going to have the links to their newsletter, the links to places you can financially support them in the show notes of the podcast. And they would love to hear from you. Also, if you are a part of a Bible teaching church that sends missionaries, and your church is open to coming alongside a family, serving as a family on the mission field in medical missions, please contact Daniel and Anya. They would love to build a relationship with your church, help your church catch a greater vision for how the Lord can use the families in your church to reach the world for Christ. So please contact them if you have that interest. And we love having you as a part of the Family Vision community. If you have not already subscribed or followed the podcast, please do so. Click the like, click the 5 stars. You can email us directly at podcast@visionaryfam.com. Thanks to our audio engineer, Todd, from Gap Digital. And we look forward to our next time together with you on Family Vision.